So far, we have only used indexes for filtering data, but we can also use indexes for sorting data. Let me show you. So here are the indexes in the customers table. We have our primary key, this secondary index on the last name column, and one composite index on the state and points columns. In the previous videos, I created a couple more indexes, but I dropped them to clean things up. Now, let's write a query and sort our customers by their state. So, select. Once again, we're only going to pick up the customer ID column. I'll talk about this in the next lecture. So, let's select this from the customers table and order by state. Now, earlier I told you that when you add an index on a column, MySQL grabs all the values in that column, sorts them, and stores them in the index. So this composite index that we have here already has these customers sorted by their state. Let's take a look. So I'm going to explain this query. As you can see, we have an index scan. To the right side, you can see the key that is used. Now, the weird thing here is that we don't see this key under possible keys column. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure why this happens, but what matters is that this index is selected to sort customers by their state. So here we have 1010 records. So MySQL is scanning this entire index, reading entries in order, okay? And in the extra column, you can see it's using this index, okay? Now let's see what happens if we sort by a different column that is not in our index. Let's say first name. The type is changed to all, which means we have a full table scan. And in the extra column, you can see using file sort. Now, this file sort doesn't have anything to do with files. It's just the name of the algorithm that MySQL uses to sort data in a table. What you need to know is that file sort is an expensive operation. So generally speaking, don't sort data unless you really have to, and then see if you can design an index so MySQL doesn't have to perform the sort operation. Now, let me show you something interesting. Here we can use the show status statement to look at the server variables. Take a look. So there's so many variables here. These are the variables used by MySQL server. Here we have a variable called last query cost, which returns the cost of the last query. So we can filter that using the like operator, last query cost. So the cost of the last query was just over 1,000. Now let's see what happens when we sort by a column that is in our index. So state, and let's look at the cost of this query. That is just over 100. So you can see that the file sort operation is very expensive. It's almost 10 times more expensive than getting data from an index. So if possible, it's a good idea to design your indexes so they can be used both for filtering and sorting data. But remember, this doesn't always look simple like what I show you in this lecture. There are some complications depending on your query, on your where clause, on your order by clause. Depending on the columns you have here and the order, MySQL may decide not to use your index for sorting data. The basic rule of thumb is that these columns that you have in the order by clause should be in the same order as the columns in the index. So here we can sort by state and points. And once again, we have an index scan. But if you add a column in the middle, let's say first name, obviously this column is not in our index. So now we get a full table scan. Another situation is where you're sorting in different directions. For example, let's sort by state and points. And look at the cost of this query. That is about 100. Now, if we sort by points in descending order, we still see the index. However, when we look at the cost of this query, we see 1,112. Here's the reason. Let's explain this query one more time. Always look in the extra column. Here we have using index and using file sort. And that means part of this query is satisfied using the index. The other part is satisfied using the file sort operation. Because the composite index that we have on these two columns is sorted by the state and then points in ascending order. So MySQL cannot utilize that index to satisfy this query because we're sorting in different directions. Now, what if we were sorting by state in descending order and also points in descending order? Take a look. In this case, we have a backward index scan, not a file sort operation. Let's look at the cost of this query. This is exactly like sorting by state and points in ascending order. So here's the basic rule of thumb. If we have an index on two columns like A and B, we can sort by A, we can sort by A and B, we can sort by the same columns in descending order, but we cannot mix the directions. Also, we cannot put a column in the middle. You saw this earlier. This results in a full table scan. Now let's see what happens if we sort by the second column of an index. So back to our query. I'm going to sort by the points column. So we have an index scan. So far, so good. But let's take a look at the extra column using index, using file sort. So once again, this is going to be an expensive query. We can validate this by looking at the cost. That is about 1,000. Here's the reason. In our current index, our customers are sorted by their state, and within each state, they're sorted by their points. So MySQL cannot rely on the order of entries in this index to sort customers by their points. Having said that, there is an exception to this rule. We can go to a particular segment or a particular state and then sort customers by their points. So if we have a where clause here, where state equals, let's say, California, with this, MySQL is not going to do a file sort operation because it's going to go to this state. And as you know, in this state, all customers are already sorted by their points. So there is no need to do a file sort operation. Let's take a look. So we explained this query. Now, under extra, we have using where, using index. We don't have using file sort. And we can look at the cost of this query. That is 11. So this query is far cheaper because we have narrowed down our search to one particular state, okay? So if you have a composite index on these two columns, these are three ways that MySQL can use to sort our data. So I'm going to delete the last one.